Welcome to the Top Quartile. I'm Katey Bogue, and I lead our Private Fund Solutions group here at Nasdaq. The Top Quartile is our webcast series focused on private markets, capital raising, and investor relations. We like to speak with industry experts and leaders in the space to get their views and perspectives on the market, as well as learn a little bit about their personal journey. Today, I'm joined by John Kim from General Catalyst. John is a deeply experienced investor relations professional who has worked across both private equity and venture capital. So with that, let's get started. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Katey. It's good to see you again. Thanks for
We're happy to have you here. So let's start a little bit with your background. You started your career off at IBM and eventually made your way into private equity. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Thanks. And when you said deeply experienced, I guess that's just a euphemism for old. And so I've been doing this for a while. I had a little bit of a different entry to the industry. I started out. I grew up in Minnesota, and this is back in the 70s and 80s, and where it wasn't as diverse as it is today. And so I had an opportunity to sort of explore, I think, a different kind of journey as an Asian American in the United States, and that journey actually, sort of being in that environment, allowed me to express more of, I think, my personality set as more traditional business, and I ended up really falling in love with sales. I went to college, and then right afterwards went into IBM and really enjoyed that experience and learned a lot about the whole profession of selling, because they do a great job of training and giving you some wonderful experience. From there, I went to business school. And after business school, I sort of explored different options, but I realized that selling, actually, or at least the concept of soliciting and marketing, was really kind of in my blood. And so I went into sales and trading on Wall Street, and then eventually that led me to a career in fundraising. And there's a lot about fundraising that allows me to combine a lot of the things that I loved about selling, which is the ability to connect with people and sort of give them an opportunity to have their voices heard and represent an organization or a product that actually could provide solutions for clients and customers.
Great. So I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit, but you stated that your calling has been dissolving the isolation between LPs and GPs to create authentic, meaningful connections and true partnerships. I think today most of the people in the industry would agree that this is the best way to operate, but as an IR professional, did you find it difficult to get initial buy-in to that idea?
Well, yes. I say yes. It's been an evolution, right? The industry itself has evolved from, at the very beginning, in private equity and venture capital, there was a scarcity of people who were doing it well. And those people who were doing it well were providing really exceptional returns for investors, but it was hard to find them and get in. It's hard to believe, given how crowded the market is today, that there was ever a time like that. And so just like any other industry where there was scarcity value, the people providing the services weren't necessarily client-centric. They're more production-centric, or they're more return-centric, which isn't a bad thing, right? But like any industry, it evolved from the Ford model of, hey, you can buy any car as long as it's black, to you go to a fancy restaurant, you can't order off the menu, to today you can order anything you want, whenever you want, get it delivered anytime you want. And the customization that we all expect, that naturally has to actually evolve in industry. And that is absolutely happening with our industry, but it's taken a long time. So at the beginning, I think it was a little more in the early ages of saying, hey, look, you know what, let's see if we can't create some sort of service experience for the investor that is better than they received before. And that's an evolution.
Yeah, make it more of a partnership
Absolutely.
Than just a sale. Great. So you've worked at private equity firms in the past. Now you're at a venture capital firm. What would you say are some of the biggest differences between the two?
Well, that's a great question. I probably have two parts to that answer, I guess. The first is, if I sort of talk about the actual operating system of private equity versus venture capital, private equity, at least in my experience, was a control strategy. And so therefore, it's not a surprise, nor is it a judgment to say that many of these organizations had control as their sort of general character. And that actually will exhibit itself in the way people actually present themselves to investors, different than a venture firm, which venture capital, you're never in control of an investment that you make. And what's interesting about that is that, therefore, the operating system tends to be more focused on being interesting or being relevant or being important. And so those two kinds of characters come into a meeting, you're going to have a very different kind of experience at the elite level when people are actually raising money from you. What is common about the experience is that people go through an evolution of sort of skills building in terms of the way they actually fundraise. It starts kind of with just simple describing what they do, and that's fairly basic, and everybody kind of comes in and just sort of talks about themselves. And then they realize it's more of an interview of sorts, and where they're trying to compete for a position, or they're really trying to get hired by the investor. And then at that point, private equity and venture capital sort of diverge, where I think the very best private equity professionals, when they're fundraising, they actually realize it's an audition. What I mean by that is that at the elite level, the people who do this really well understand that if you're interviewing with somebody, you're just trying to capture their mind. But if you want to capture their heart, you actually have to audition for the part. And the auditioning is actually saying, hey, how do I relate to you? How do I relate to your needs, the person, your theory of mind? What are you thinking, and how can I be that person? Because in private equity, whether it's sustainable or not, one of the things we've seen is that it is a little more commoditized in terms of the returns you can expect. Although that's not completely true. The top quartile returns are quite exceptional. On the venture side, very different. Just at that elite level, I'm trying to capture your heart and mind. I'm trying to capture your imagination for the future. I'm trying to capture, the idea that, hey, look, we are here to curate the future in some way, and that future could be really amazing. And so it becomes more of a proselytization of saying, hey, let me show you what is the art of the possible, and how we as a firm can actually bring that to life. And the returns that you're going to get in venture capital tend to be a lot more volatile, but very exciting, as you have to get somebody to really buy into the dream of hey, this is what could happen. Those people who do that really well, those are the people who actually are the most effective fundraisers in the venture business.
So it's auditioning versus inspiring.
That's right. I say proselytizing. You have to actually be able to get people to believe.
Yep.
And that belief is in many ways not grounded in faith, but it's grounded in both trust and inspiration. Because you can believe that a venture capitalist actually is going to do great things, but you have to be inspired to say, hey, I'm going to take the risk to actually put money in with this person so I can actually create some amazing outcomes beyond just great returns.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. So we're seeing VC firms add more content and media functions to their operations and supporting their portfolio companies, and it's almost like it's a way for the VCs to essentially audition or market themselves to new founders. How do these efforts work together with investor relations, and do you see content playing a bigger role in IR in the future?
Sure. If anybody spends any time asking me or talking to me about fundraising, they'll know that I always say, hey, look, the amount of money somebody can raise is really a function of your track record plus your differentiation divided by how complicated your story is. And it's unbelievable how often I find that to be very predictive and instructive. So track record is your track record. That's sort of the data. Although, a good fundraiser, a good marketing professional can make that track record look a little more special by positioning and description. Complications are exactly what you think they are. Headline risk, turnover in the team, et cetera. And then what's left is differentiation. And differentiation come in a lot of different forms, right? Some folks have a huge value-added operating partner team. Some folks have incredibly specific niche strategies. In venture capital, but not just in venture capital, it can apply to any other asset class. The ability to actually help people understand the world around them through content is really a powerful differentiator. And that's something that we see in the venture capital industry for sure, because again, if you're sort of talking about inspiring people, you're talking about trying to describe what could be happening in the future, trying to talk about innovation, and how do you innovate in a responsible way, and how can you do this in a way that actually you can feel that you're contributing to creating powerful, positive change that endures. Creating content around that and helping people understand the world around them, help them make better decisions. And that content actually will drive people to your door to give you that audience, to give you that credibility, and frankly, to give you that inspiration that you need to actually help you get over the edge, because they've got a lot of choices.
Yeah, this is very true. So strong LP-GP relationships are a must in today's market. What do you see as the next frontier for investor relations and how GPs are servicing their clients?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We sort of talked a little bit at the very beginning of this interview, and I talked about the customization of the experience. And I want to hold space for that, because that just has to happen, right? The idea that everything around us in the world is becoming more customized for the individual. And yet we're so slow to get there on the alternative side. But it's going to happen. It cannot be any other way. But the partnership piece, that's the exciting part. And that's the part that actually gets me up in the morning and keeps me excited about work, because what you're seeing is, we forget that the limited partners, as a group and specifically as subsectors, actually represent people. And there are real people behind them, right? If you're an endowment, there are students that you're there's a school behind there that you're trying to actually hopefully promote, and maybe one of these kids cures cancer. If it's a foundation, by its very essence, it's a charitable organization. And if it's a pension plan or a public plan, there are public servants who actually depend on the returns that you are making so that they can actually live a fulfilled life in retirement and pay for their health care. And that's something that we as society actually owe them, because they're in public service for us. Okay. What the punchline there is that they all have an ethos that is about serving society. And it is completely naive to think that ethos isn't going to make its way into our business. We can't let the greed train run us off the track. Like, we have to start to accept that notions of ESG, or what we call responsible innovation, are part of the partnership that they're looking for. Now, returns are why they invest.
Right.
But it is the ethos and the ethic of saying, hey, look, we're trying to create positive change and create good returns at the same time. It has to actually show up, and that partnership is really exciting to me, actually. I think it's exciting for a lot of people who do what I do, because we're entering a new generation of sort of social awareness and social responsibility, and it doesn't mean that you're going to diminish the need for creating great returns. What you're going to do is create the duality of saying, hey, we have to be in this for some other purpose beyond just actually trying to grind out an extra basis point or two.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We hear it constantly from our clients, from other industry individuals that we talk to. The concepts of ESG and DEI are kind of the topic du jour, but I think for the right reasons, and I think it's something that they're very focused on actually truly changing, right?
Yes.
And it will take time,
Yes.
especially in private markets, but I also think there's a real opportunity, and maybe even more so with venture capital than some of the other asset classes, to be able to create meaningful change.
Absolutely. It's where idealism has to meet cynicism, right? It is one of the things I love to explain to people is that, hey, to be a good investor, you do have to have some doubt, some cynicism. Like, if you're just always optimistic all the time, like, you'll invest in anything. So you do have to have a little bit of, I don't call it cynicism, but you have to be critical. You have to, and we can't let that be the enemy of positive change and the enemy of idealism. And that is something that I think we're finally starting to see in the business in a big way, actually.
Yeah, that's great to see. So we like to close these interviews out with a little something we call our Fast Five questions. And it's really just to get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. So, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, question number 1. What is the best book that you read in 2021?
Gosh, the best book I read in 2021 was Heavy by Katey Bogue. It came out a couple years ago, but I finally got around to reading it. It's a really powerful book. It's outstanding. The best book about the industry I read was actually Key Man, which is actually the story about a barrage and the falsehoods that actually happened in the fall that firm. It was really quite a page turner as well.
Yeah, good lessons learned from that. Okay, question number 2. What is the best movie or documentary that you watched in the last year?
Great question. My best movie I saw this year was actually The Guilty. It was with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's just, he is a sensational actor, and it's just a tour de force of his skills of holding a story together for 90 to 90 minutes. And it's really, got a lot of twists and turns to it. It's just wonderful. Best documentary is The Vow. A little bit self-serving because my partner actually helped produce it, David Fialco.
Okay.
But it's a really neat documentary about how people can get caught up into cult and how, you know, it really is actually all around us, and we have to be really careful. And we're just so judgmental about people who get caught up in these things, and like, got to be careful because you know what, it can happen to almost any of us.
Yeah. I will have to watch that one.
Great.
Question number 3, what is the best news source or resource for IR professionals?
So I actually like eVestments. And now I can't remember.
I didn't tell him to say
Yeah,
this,
I
by
can't
the
remember
way.
if you guys have a relationship with them or not. But it is really, they've really come a long way. It's you know, it's sort of voyeuristic. You get to see not just how other people are reporting your returns, but you get to see other people's returns and what people are saying about them in investment communities all around the markets. It's really a fascinating database where you can just get lost in it for days if you once
Go
you
down
get
the
kind of
rabbit
go down
holes.
the road. Yeah.
Well, we obviously very much like to hear
I
that.
forgot, you know what? I forgot you guys are actually part of that organization.
Question number 4, who is your biggest professional inspiration?
Again, not to be self-serving, but the chairman of our organization is a gentleman named Ken Chenault, and he is every bit as amazing as his reputation has been created. He has been a great mentor to me, and he is the person that really taught me to focus on purpose. You know, egoic ambition and egoic success isn't sustainable over the long run, and he is somebody who's created such success by leading a purposeful life and a purposeful journey, and that is something that I admire a lot and have been trying to incorporate into my career journey ever since I've had a chance to work with Ken.
That's great. It's tremendous to work for an organization where you have a leader you can really admire.
Absolutely.
We feel very much that way at Nasdaq about
Great.
Adina. So, question number 5, who is your biggest personal inspiration?
You know, I have so many, and I guess, you know, I'd have to say that anyone who works now in health services, frontline, first-line responders in the pandemic. You know, this morning I was, you know, this is being filmed in February 2022, and this morning you can see that, you know, we clearly going to lose over 1 million people to COVID. And the fact that we have had people in the hospitals working on our behalf and working on behalf of society is amazing, and it's heroic. But also to think about what is happening to them as they witness this. Because for us, we get to disassociate ourselves by reading about it, but they every day are showing up saying, hey, we got to try to bend that curve. You know, I think in my life, I just can't imagine there's going to be a more inspirational cohort of people than people who actually work in hospitals and are first responders.
And they've been doing it for 2 years,
absolutely.
nonstop. That's such a
Absolutely.
long time. I think that's a great answer. Well, John, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a great conversation, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Well, it's good to see you again. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.